Hello, I'm Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and welcome to my blog, where it is both my mission and my pleasure to highlight my creative journey in hopes of inspiring you and providing you with takeaway, all with the sole purpose that your journey can be at least a little bit easier. Now, before I fully dive into things, I would love to take the opportunity to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already. That way you get all the various lessons and episodes that I put out. Thank you if you already did, and thank you if you just did. It truly means a lot to me, as I hope it does to you. So, normally when I recap you on the things going on, I usually start with a lot of the creative, and then, maybe I'll meander into some side tangent stuff. But this time around, I want to kind of flip it, and, even why I want to flip it and talk about kind of the rest of the stuff that's going on before the creative is, in many ways, when you think about it, as indie artists, that's what we're dealing with, right? Where there's the day-to-day aspects of life, both good and bad. And then on top of that, somehow we have to fit in, time-wise, resource-wise, money-wise, our creative ventures. And, it's not always easy, right? And so this past week, it's kind of like the idea of when it rains and pours, in both good ways and bad ways. So let's start with the negative and we'll move to the positive. So, I got this letter from the IRS essentially saying that I owed some money, which, according to my records, I shouldn't, yada yada. So either way, I give them a call and, ask for details about this, because they list a very kind of, a specific of like, hey, this is how much you owe, this is for what it's for. But when I say this is what it's for, it's the bare minimum information. It's like, hey, there was a 1099 from somebody, and here's the address. And it's like, okay. And the infuriating thing about all this is that now I have to essentially clear my name that I don't owe this money, but the IRS can't give me the information that they have, meaning the 1099. They're like, well, we only have it in an electronic form. I'm like, great, email it to me. I don't care. They're like, we can't do that, sir. And it's just infuriating on a number of levels that this is where we are in 2024. That we are so ineffective and inefficient that I'm being asked by the IRS that, hey, you owe money, but they can't provide me for what reason? I'm just supposed to take them on the good faith that, hey, I owe you. And it's like, okay, let's maybe say I do. I don't know, right? All these things, because I'm sure that happens. But it's like, you still would want the information to cross-reference with your records. And so what ends up happening is I have to then, because the only information, right, there's not a phone number, there's not a name, there's not anything provided other than an address. So I have to go and mail out a letter to these people, whoever they may be, and essentially say, hey, this is the situation, and at this point in time, I'm not even requesting to fix the error. I just need the basic information of why it is that the IRS thinks this. And by the way, I have a deadline to respond to the IRS, and they're like, my favorite is at the top, it'll say this is not a bill, but it's like, okay, it is a bill because you think I owe this much, and there's already interest on it. Like, I just found out about this, and you're already adding on interest. So, yes, there's a ticking time clock to this whole thing. And so just to get the basic information, I have to write a letter, print it out, and go mail this letter out with a tracking number, right? So that way I can show proof to the IRS that, hey, I did this. I didn't just like stamp it and throw it in the mail and then no one knows where it goes. And just to be sure, so I also made sure that it required a signature. So this is time and literally money. And when I called the IRS back, I'm like, so who, let's say we clear this up. Who owes me this money that I just paid just to get the information? I was like, well, what do you mean? And I know I'm never going to see that money, but that's asinine. The fact that to clear my name, I have to go through this rigmarole and it costs me money, so I don't owe any money, right? So I'm waiting on that. And of course, every time you call these places, someone gives you different information. So now, rather than having been able to, do kind of everything at once that I needed to, now I have to reprint something, and this time mail it to the IRS, which is a separate thing. And it's not essentially like the case is already open in the sense that I'm refuting this. It's now me having to send different documentation to the IRS saying I'm requesting this information. And what ends up happening is, again, they can't provide it, even though they have it. So what this is that essentially I am allowing them to get this information on my behalf from the original person. Which again, the IRS has, right? So it's absolutely insane to me that the information that they have, they can't just give it to me, even though it concerns me. But anyway, so yes, so I have to, essentially get this thing signed off, sent to the IRS, allowing them the consent that they can then reach out to the person and get that information. So it's like two channels at the same time. And again, I found out that this was a possibility as well after the fact, because the first few people that I spoke to, they didn't let me know this. So yay. Anyway, and just in that regard, as far as if the IRS has to request the information, one of the reasons they had me send it in this early is because it can take up to 3 months, just to retain this information. So before any real action steps happen, to just get the information about all of this, so we are all on the same page, will take about 3 months. This is complete idiocracy to me. So there's that. The other aspect is where I live, like a lot of people in LA have, they have parking spots that you go through an alleyway to get to your parking spot, and you park essentially behind this building, or it's below an apartment complex, whatever, but it's in an alleyway, and you pull out into the alleyway to get in and out. Well, it just so happens that mine is my spot is across from this other apartment building where people go in and out, and people constantly park there. Now, some people legitimately go in for 2 minutes, come back out, yada yada. Other people park there for 30 minutes, an hour, perhaps even more. And the issue with this is that if there's other cars parked in their spots where I'm at, I can't get out. There's no going forward because that's a parking spot. There's no backing out because the car in the street is now blocking me. And I might have been able to pull it off, wiggling out Austin Power style, if the spot next to me was available, but it's not because a car is parked there as well. Now, the front and the side of me, those are legal parking spots. Those are actual parking spots. The person behind me is in the street, parked illegally. And this happens far too often, to the point that I've had to Uber for work in order to not be late for certain things. At night, if I've made a Costco run and I'm coming back, they're there. They're not moving, nothing happens. I wait 5-10 minutes, nothing happens. So then I have to park, wherever street parking is available, 3 blocks away. And there I am like a jackass lugging this Costco stuff back and forth. And by the time I'm done, the car is still there. So it is infuriating. At the very least, the decent courtesy would be leave a number. So you can be called and say, hey, move this. But people don't think that way. And this is an issue. You might be wondering, okay, well, why haven't you done anything about it? I've tried. I've spoken with my apartment complex. I've spoken with their apartment complex. I've tried to get the city involved with this. No one seems to care. But recently, there was an incident, and all of a sudden, the person that was parked behind me, they had an expired license, and I was able to file a police report based on that. And all of a sudden, now I can present that to my apartment complex and this and that. And all of a sudden, all the things that for 2 years were impossible, all of a sudden very possible. Because now people feel themselves at fault on something, and they don't want to deal with that. And so now things are all of a sudden changing. That couldn't be done. Where now I will have, and by the way, an apartment building is supposed to have a tow truck company contracted, right? Which I've asked for in the past of like, hey, is there a tow truck company I can call? Now all of a sudden, there's this flood of options available to me. I wonder what changed. And it goes back to that first, like, we are just so inefficient and ineffective, and I don't understand why. And I don't want to be the asshole. Like, literally, all this could be avoided is if people just left a phone number, like, hey, you want to park there, and you're going to stay more than legitimately like 2 minutes? Here's the number to call, blah, blah, blah. And I get very frustrated. And it's frustrating to be this frustrated. I don't want to have to be this angered in dealing with people left and right. But I'm also tired of being in the wrong. I am not in the wrong. And I'm fed up. And so I'm not taking no for an answer this time. Now that I have this momentum, until it is up to my satisfaction, I will not relent. And I don't care what anybody else thinks, because you cannot park illegally there. It is illegal. And there will be consequences moving forward. Point blank, you can't block people in. Like I said, I've had to Uber, and it cost me tons of money to be able to go places. Now, what if there was a legitimate emergency? Again, now I'm Ubering. Costing me money that I will never see, because no one's going to fucking foot the bill for that. But this is the shit that we all deal with. Not literally this, but the inefficiency, the ineffectiveness, and the sheer stupidity and fucking moronic tendencies of people. And I've seen people when they come out and I'm like, hey, you're blocking the spot. They're like, oh, and I curse at them. And they're like, whoa, wait. It's like, this isn't my fucking fault. You did this. You parked there. You're in the fucking wrong. And so how fucking dare you try to flip that on me? As if you're the fucking innocent bystander. I won't fucking have it. Not anymore. So it is infuriating. And this is the shit that we all deal with. Again, not necessarily this, but our own variation of this, where we just have to deal with bureaucracy and all this other crap, you know? If you have medical issues that you're dealing with, you know, dealing with car insurance, dealing with all kinds of stuff, it is infuriating because it's so asinine. And it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't. And then we can expand that to the larger world. I mean, just this past week, I mean, everything that has happened, it's insane. An assassination attempt. You know, our political spectrum is going crazy. And even in, you know, the Copa America and the Euros were happening at the same time. These are soccer competitions, international competitions. The Euros is European international teams playing against each other for a cup. And then Copa America is South American teams and North American teams. And that was a very enjoyable month of soccer. But as far as Copa America goes, right, one, there was two horrific incidents at the stadiums. One in the semifinals, where after Uruguay and Colombia played each other, a fight broke out after the game and continued into the stands, where literally players went into the stands. Now, there's extenuating circumstances. People are saying that, you know, the families of the players were involved with the fans, or they were in danger rather. And so the players went into the stands to protect their families, which is understandable. What's not understandable is why the families would have ever been placed in that sort of danger to begin with, when we have box seats for them available and yada yada. But it all goes down to money and just stupidity. So we're just so nearsighted about our own little fucking bubble that in the regards of this, that it's like, okay, we don't want to give the families you know, their own sectioned off space where they can be safe, because it'll cost, we won't make as much profit. It's not that it would even cost anything, it's just they wouldn't make as much money. And so this is what you get. You skimp out on security, you skimp out on X, Y, and Z, and it leads to this. Now you think people would have learned. Then comes the final. Now on the final, and I don't have all the information about this, and not that I do about, you know, both of these things are still very much under investigation. But as far as the final, you know, some tickets were like over $1,000, some were like $3,000. Like, people spent an insane amount of money to get these tickets. And before the game was just a complete crapshoot getting into the gates. Again, trying to save money. There was less security and stuff like that. And then you have kids, mothers, and so forth being pummeled, squished into barricades and stuff like that by, you know, fans trying to storm in. And it just led to a complete shit show where the game had to be delayed an hour and a half. Why? Why do we allow these things to happen? And I really hope that this is a learning experience, because the World Cup's going to be here. And it's not just the stadiums. It's going to be the travel, the hotels. Like, I legitimately worry that when people come for the World Cup in 2026 to the US, they will start to see, what the hell is this? Like, this is asinine. Things are, listen, not everything is perfect everywhere. But I'll never forget watching certain things, let's say, of like Japan. And, we have this notion that like, oh, Japan's so advanced. It's like, no, they're not advanced. They're in the year 2024, and we could have certain of those things. We just literally choose not to. And so, yeah, as far as our infrastructure, like, I think a lot of issues will be truly exposed at the World Cup stage if they're not fixed, if they are not fixed. Because in 2 games, what was like essentially we just saw a horrific, we saw 2 very horrific incidents. Both could have been avoided. So it's just wild to me. Now, on the plus side, as far as the soccer aspect goes, Spain won the Euros against England. Now, I had originally picked Germany to win. I wanted them to win probably primarily because of Toni Kroos. It was his last few games. He said he would retire after playing from professional soccer at the end of all this. And so I wanted to see him go out on top. Plus, I thought Germany actually legitimately had a good team. They were hosting it, so I thought maybe they would go through. France was a top pick for many people, but I just felt like Germany might have an edge being at home. But man, Spain, for the whole tournament, just showed something different. And if anything, the reason I didn't pick Spain was at the start of the tournament was because I didn't think they had the greatest striker. I thought their back line was a little bit frail. But man, they managed to elevate themselves to a whole other level. And collectively, they were amazing. And I hate England. I really do. And it's funny because when I was growing up, I really kind of liked England. I liked the Paul Scholes. I liked the David Beckhams, the Michael Owens. But there's just this arrogance, and maybe it was there when I was growing up, but now it just seems much more in my face, prevalent, and I'm aware of it. But I just hate the whole arrogance of you won one tournament and you think you're deserved everything. So I just hate the English arrogance. And I have friends from Spain and stuff like that, so I was going to root for Spain. But watching this game, it truly was magnificent because Spain looked sped up. England looked like they were in slow motion. And everything was pinpoint precision from Spain. And with purpose, not just moving the ball side to side. It was all deliberate. And then Spain, like at the start of the second half, Spain come out, they score. It's like, yes, I was so excited. And then England tied it up. And I'll admit, I was a little bit nervous, but still, I trusted Spain to, if they just kept at it, that they could win. Because they've already proven it. They did it against Germany, where this was in overtime, and they were mere seconds away from going into penalty kicks, but Spain just like edged it out and got a last second goal essentially before penalties, and therefore won the game. So I was like, they can do this. And they did. I forget the exact minute. I think let's just round it around to like the 85th minute. So still, maybe like so 5 minutes officially left, but then you add on stoppage time. So about, let's say, total 10 minutes after that still left to play for. But regardless, it came like before they even went into extra time, they got a goal, and you just knew it deflated both the English fans and the English team to the point that like they're not coming back from this. And it was great to see because, as I'm not the first person to say this, football won. England had a lot of luck throughout this whole tournament. Not that they're not talented, but they did get lucky in many ways. But Spain, I mean, the people they beat Croatia, they beat Italy, they beat a good Georgia team. I mean, let's not sneeze at Georgia, but fine, you can write them off. Then they beat Germany, the host nation. Then they beat Spain, and then they beat England. All of these teams, and they were far superior in each of those matches. But it doesn't always go that way. But I'm glad it did, because football won in the end, and that's great to see. So I was very happy about that. And on the plus side of things in general, this past weekend, like apparently everyone and their mothers had birthdays. So in one sense, it was good because I could lump it all together and kind of just go from one thing to the next and celebrate everybody. Another aspect, it's like, whew, this is a lot. But regardless, it's always great to celebrate your friends. Now, so I've shared all this, and as I made mention at the top, this represents both the good and the bad aspects of our everyday. And then we try to, fit in the artistic stuff as much as we can. And you may recall that I'm still in the middle of a rewrite. And that holds true today as it did then. And it is frustrating. I'm trying to find the path forward, but as is the case with most things, if you feel stuck, you got to try different solutions. And so, I reached out to to the editor of my first novel, Emily Krempholtz, who's absolutely amazing and kind of been not as involved as my actual team, but has kind of been there since the beginning when this idea formed. And so, I asked her, like, hey, can you read the most current version of the script? Excuse me. And can we meet to discuss it? Just to get a different perspective and also to, I talk about the business of my life. My team's dealing with some of their own stuff and things like that. And so, they haven't been as available to me. It's just the reality of things. You have to kind of accept it and figure out ways to move forward with what you got. And luckily, Emily was gracious and, read it. We talked and gave me some good perspectives and kind of really centered me of like, okay, here's how you can move it forward and so forth. And the good news is any of these notes that I've been getting, it changes the underlying aspects, but as far as like what happens, isn't really that different, if that makes any sense. And so, since that meeting, I've been kind of revising the script accordingly and just continuing to push through. And with the goal of like, hey, if I can really set up the first 60 pages, which is the first literally half of the movie, 1 hour of the movie, if I can really make that good and strong, then I can start to work on the back half, the last 60, the last hour, and make that good. And I know I've said it before, but I think the lesson in all of this, and I shared this with a friend of mine, her name is Danielle Robay, and she hosts a podcast called Pretty Smart. And at the end of every Pretty Smart episode, she asked the guest, hey, what's the smartest decision you've ever made? And I told her that's a question I do think about often. Like, what would my answer be? I joke that sometimes I come up with clever and witty answers, but there's nothing ever that's felt, it's not that it's dishonest, but it hasn't felt precise. And what I shared with her through this experience that I kind of came to was that the smartest decision I ever made was just to keep going. That no matter what a life unfortunately throws at you, both the good and the bad, and no matter how many times with the script I get it wrong, or I get it wrong in other aspects of life, or whatever other demons of life that are self-perpetuated, I just keep trying, and I just keep trying to be better. And I don't know where it'll all lead, but that in and of itself just has, in my heart of hearts, has to be enough somehow. And I shared that with her, and that really resonated. And just a quick side tangent, I'm trying to really be better at, when they say, if you think of somebody, text them, call them, do something, right? So I'm really trying to be better at that. And so, the thought came to me, and I was like, oh, I should share it with her. And I was like, whatever, why would she won't care, I don't want to bother her. But I was like, you know what, let me do it. And so I wrote it out, and it actually really moved her. And so all that to say that, again, I understand that life keeps us busy and stuff like that, and it's not always possible, and you never want it to feel like another chore. But just in general, even as simple as hey, I was thinking about you today, just wanted to let you know, hope all is well. That can go a long way. We need more things like that in the world. We really do, to uplift the small little acts of kindness. But yeah, that's sort of been my takeaway, is that certainly with the script, as I continue to trudge forward, and certainly I would have loved to have been done with it, in the sense that at least it hits the target, and yes, there's going to be changes to elevate certain things, but at least we're there. With this version, with everything thus far, we're hovering around the landing zone, let's say. And who knows, will this next round that I do be one that is able to land, and we took off, one of the wheels or something like that, but we still managed to land, everyone's safe. We'll see. That would be the ideal. It actually would, right? But if not, just keep trying. And it's hard. It's difficult. It can be deflating in many ways. Part of what has kept me going is the proof of concept that we're making for this movie. It's a short film. It's 2 minutes. I call it, call it what you want. It's a teaser, right? If this movie were completed, here's what the trailer for it would be. Kind of. That's what we're going with. And working with, this is an animated movie. If you don't know this about this project, a 2D animated movie, hand drawn. And seeing this little teaser come together, our anticipated deadline for this is in October, and seeing this stuff really come together, it was exciting when the initial storyboards came in, but that's still far removed from the end product. Now I'm getting what's called layouts, then key poses, and now some of the shots I'm even starting to see with color, and backgrounds are coming in and stuff like that. And so it's really starting to form, and it's wow, this is really beautiful. Yes, I've got to have the script to then support it, because nothing happens without that. But as far as this as a standalone product, it looks and works really well, and that's amazing. And there's plenty of more work to be done, but it's encouraging to really see. Excuse me. And so that's kind of been a big driving force for me through all of this. And I also, one of the things that really excites me is I can't wait to share kind of the animation process and using this as, examples of, here's what it looks like in the animation phase, the animatic phase, blah, 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 and, walk people step by step through that. So, yeah, that's kind of the long and short of things and where we are, and the things we all have to deal with, I'm sure life throws curveballs at you. And my heart goes out to you, for having to deal with anything in life, it can be challenging. And what's challenging also is when all the things happen all at once, like some of this stuff, I was telling a friend of mine, Courtney, some of this I can maybe deal, like individually I can deal with this stuff, but when it's all lumped together, it can be a lot, it can be a lot. So, yeah, that's kind of what's been happening in my life. Yeah, thank you for listening and listening to me rant to some degree. I hope there's enough takeaway there. As always, you can ask questions, provide comments about any of this, or whatever you'd like me to talk about in the future as a topic. Comment down below or hit me up on social media at Svitek. I truly do appreciate it and hope to see you next time.